Master Productions.
What's up, guys? It's Master here. So, today we're going to be talking about why choose Glad Warrior over other specs. Why would you? Why wouldn't you? So, we're going to go into pros and cons first, and I'm going to talk about how they are compared to the other big melee classes, and then I'm going to talk about, lastly, comps and how you can make a comp, if you can, for a Gladiator Stance Warrior. In my first video, I got a lot of feedback about, I was moving around a lot and things like that. I was moving around a lot and it was making it hard to concentrate, with the camera moving around because I was just doing my normal pacing thing. I just do that while I'm not doing anything. So this time, to try to hinder that, I'm going to do a battleground or maybe some skirmishes at the end or Ashran, something. I do want to note that this is the first time that I've talked and done a battleground at the same time, so we'll see how it goes. When you talk about the pros, that's what I'm going to talk about first. When you look at the pros, most of them are pretty straightforward, but there is one that most people don't believe, most people don't think is the case, and that is damage. Gladiator stance does more than enough damage. I very rarely lose in damage when it comes to straight numbers. I very rarely lose in damage to another warrior warrior of a different spec, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, you do have dot cleave. It's one of the better dot cleavers in the game, just because you got deep wounds, and as you can see, it's about 50k damage over 15 seconds in PvP combat. And you see it spreads through Devastate, so a single target ability, but most importantly, through Thunderclap. Okay, it spreads through Thunderclap, so everyone within 12 yards, because I have that glyph that we talked about in the first video, everyone within 12 yards gets this huge dot on them every time I use Thunderclap. So if you rotate Thunder and Clap about every 10 seconds, your dot cleave is huge. It's amazing. You do a ton of damage. It's really good for rot comps. But what's great about it is it's not the kind of class that's only good at dot cleaving. The single target is really good for this spec. I actually did some numbers against arms. I haven't done them against Fury because I couldn't really find a good Fury. But against arms, I was pushing more single target. I was pushing more with three or more than three targets, and my burst was more if they weren't running Avatar. If they're running Avatar, then my burst was a little bit lower, but my burst is more frequent. So, it's something people don't believe usually, but it's the case, really. Secondly, rather, we got mobility. And mobility, this is one of those things that it's very straightforward. You just have a shield charge. When you go into Glad Stance, your shield block, I think it's called, is replaced with shield charge. And it does your damage boost. It's how you push out numbers with Glad, but it also is a 10-yard range. And it's a charge. So I'll do that right now if I can not be disoriented. I'll get up to this warrior right here. I don't have the rage. See, that was shield charge. So I do have more mobility. It's really good against mages and hunters and the druids, monks, things like that. That really good at getting away. And it's almost always helpful. And it goes really good with that 12-yard slow that I talked about in the first video with Thunder and Clap. Lastly, for the pros, you of course do have more survival. And you don't have more survival passives. You don't passively reduce. Your damage isn't reduced passively. You can't go into defensive stance like Arms and Fury can, but your defensive cooldowns are much, much better. You have things like the Last Stand and Rage Regeneration combo I talked about in the last video, and then you've got Shield Wall, Demoralizing Shout. It's very, very effective at staying alive. It's one of the best, hands down, one of the best 1v1 specs in the game right now. That's what I do a lot of times. I just go duel people in Durotar for like little amounts of gold, and I'm probably gonna make a video later talking about how to 1v1 certain classes like Hunters and Ferals and DKs, and maybe some Warlocks, other Warriors. We'll see what happens. But I do have that planned, so. But let's get into the cons, the hard part, the bad parts about Glad. And the first thing I'm going to talk about, I don't think is as big of a deal. It's you don't have a Shattering Throw, because in your glyphs, Shattering Throw, let me just see if I can find it. Shattering Throw is Arms and Fury only. So Prot Warriors can't have Shattering Throw, obviously. Glad Warriors can't because it's a Prot. That being said, I think Gladiator stance does enough damage to make up for that, you know, problem, you could just call it. The big issue, however, is this is the rough one, guys. The big problem with Gladiator stance is it doesn't have a Mortal Strike effect. You don't get a healing reduction debuff. So with Arms, Mortal Strike puts on that debuff that reduces the healing they take by 20%. Fury has one, I think it's Wild Strikes. I'm not entirely sure about that, but yeah, Fury has one, and it's the same effect. Gladiator stance sadly doesn't have one, and that's really what hurts Gladiator stance more than anything. I think that 25% goes a long way, and a lot of people didn't agree. A lot of people thought it was the fact that we didn't have to spell anymore and things like that, but I really think that the MS effect is what hurts Gladiator stance. And we'll talk more about that when we go into the comps, because that directly affects what comps you make. But that MS effect is the biggest downfall of Gladiator stance, in my opinion. So now we know, the basic pros and cons. Why would you choose a Glad Warrior over anything else is the main question. When you get down to it, that's what you're really wanting to find out. A lot of people would say that you wouldn't. I would disagree. So I think it's better with Warriors against compared to other Warriors. It's better at the dot cleave, of course. It does push more numbers. The burst isn't as bad for Glad as most people think it is. I actually push really high burst numbers and decent. I mean, you guys saw it in the first video, my burst numbers, and realize that full duration is pretty. There's not really a it doesn't go up and then go down real quick. It really goes up and just stays up. It almost ramps up, which could be good or bad compared to who you talk to. But it's pretty good, I think. So damage, you're getting a better damage. You have more mobility. You can stick to your target better. So you can do a lot of pressure on healers because you can always be on their ass and always interrupt them. And it's a really good place to be in, a Gladiator stance warrior getting to pretty much freely sit on a healer because you're just on their ass the entire time. You just can't get beat with those extra shield wall. The extra shield charges. You just push that much more damage. The big problem is one thing that was talked about. Yeah, it's better at dot cleaving than a warrior. It's probably better damage than a warrior. But so is a Death Knight. And Death Knight has a Dispel. So why would you pick a warrior over a Death Knight? Well, I think that goes into the mobility, the sticking power, the ability to go into a tank stance. If I need to mid-battleground, if I need to flag carry, I can always go full-on tank. I think you do have, the survivability might not be... if I go prot stance, I probably have better survivability. But the biggest thing I would say is the damage and that chance to go into tank stance, because the damage is very similar. There's not a lot of difference when it comes to Glad and Frosty K damage. I do more single target, but they do more dot cleave, and the numbers usually end up being about the same. So it just depends on what you kind of. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to get in a group, but when I get in a group, people usually keep me and don't. Um, they don't just kick me or anything. They usually let me play a game, and they're like, okay, you're not too bad, and they let me play. So it's really just another alternative to. Really, it's another alternative to a Frosty K when it comes down to it. But when you talk about comps, like I said, the biggest downfall to the Gladiator Warrior is you don't have an MS effect. So you can't do a lot of other warrior comps. You can't do Warlock Shaman or Warrior Lock Shaman is what it's called. You can't do Warrior Lock Shaman. You can't do Turbo Cleave, things like that. But there are some really nice Glad stance comps. Really, they all revolve around, for the threes anyway, they revolve around getting a teammate that has an MS effect, and then you're able to just push your numbers. My favorite one is African Turtle Cleave, I think it's called. So basically, it's your Glad Warrior, and you get a Beast Mastery Hunter, and the Hunter needs to have a pet that has an MS effect. So the Devil Sword's a really good one for this situation. So a Hunter with a Devil Sword, and then lastly, you will probably a Druid. The Druid and the Hunter can cycle CCs really well. The Hunter has the MS effect with his pet, and then you end up having a lot of burst potential because the BM Hunter and Glad Warrior burst damages are on the same 1 minute cooldown or timer. Well, me anyway, because I'm using Bloodbath. So that 1 minute timer, a burst on every other stun with traps and cyclones going out on healers. It's a very good comp. It's a very good situation. It hasn't let me down yet. I don't have a lot of experience on this character on threes, but like I said, it hasn't let me down yet. I'd be interested in checking it out more. But that's the main threes comp. Twos comp, I like to run with a healer. I usually like Resto Druid or Disc Priest the most. Resto Druid is nice because I can sit on a DPS, and the Druid can CC healers, so it reduces the pressure that my healer's taking, but it allows him to CC my healer as well. It's a good situation. Disc, I like running with Disc because they can push numbers if they have to. I used to run with a Resto Shaman. I don't know if I want to keep messing with that. They do have, there's a lot of good things that they have. They have, when they dispel you, you gain 10% damage for like 8 seconds, things like that. But I think right now I'm just going to stick with having a Resto Shaman a Resto Druid or a Disc Priest. And that's really, when you're looking at twos and threes, if fives, you've got a lot more wiggle room with fives. With fives, you just want to have a class that has the MS effect. And if you have that, you're usually going to be okay. Just have a class with the MS effect, then add your CC classes, add those kind of things. I was running with a rogue, and he was running with the MS effect. A rogue, a frost mage, a disc priest for the bubble, but we probably should have taken the bubble break, the mass dispel glyph. We probably should have taken a Mistweaver monk instead, but we were running with disc priest and a Resto Druid, and that was working out well. We went half and half on the first 20 games we were playing, and we weren't using a mic, anything like that. So it was a nice comp. Just play with that comp. You find a good CC team. You add in a damage class with the MS effect. You go in there and do your dot cleave and your big damage, and you should be okay. When it comes to RBGs, it's all about that dot cleave team. Anyway, I do want to point this out real quick. If you're looking, I am top damage by about 2 times as much. The second highest was a Shadow Priest, and I know it's just a random BG, so it's not like these are big number. This isn't a normal occurrence. I'm usually not doubling Shadow Priest damage, but I usually am up there, way up there like that. So look, that's the kind of damage that you can push with Gladiator Warrior. Let's look at, before I get into RBG comps, let's look at the, oh, it deleted it. No, it didn't. Let's look at my numbers. So if you look at Death Knight numbers, Frost Death Knight, this is what I was talking about, Frost Death Knight, Glad Warrior. Frost Death Knight, they do very similar numbers, and the Frost Death Knight has a dispel, but you're sticking on the target better. You have more survivability, and more of your damage is single target, whereas more of the Frost Death Knight's damage is that necrotic plague dot cleave, and it's very effective. It's very good. Frost Decay is very good right now. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the numbers are different, and this might help you decide, would you rather have a Frost Death Knight or would you rather have a Glad Warrior? If you're looking at Frost Death Knights, their dot cleave is usually somewhere at 30 to 40% of their damage, and then they have things like Howling Blast that cleaves. They might use a Blood Boil or Death and Decay. It's just cleave. They've got a lot of cleave damage. Probably more like 40 to 50% of their damage is cleaving, whether it's dot cleaving or Howling Blast or whatever. With my damage, now do realize that was a temple, so I was doing more single target damage simply because I was single targeting, orb carriers. But I was only doing 15%. I did 12 million damage, and only 15% of it was my dot cleave, deep wounds. Revenge hits another target, but they have to be in melee range, and that usually doesn't do anything. I like to come up with just a guesstimation of about 10 to 20% of my revenge damage may be cleave. I don't know if there's a way to actually find the actual numbers. So not very much is revenge. Thunderclap didn't do very much either. So maybe we're looking at about 20% of my damage was dot cleave. So the rest of that was just head-on single target damage. Me being able to stick to that target, slow that target, and destroy, just take out their health, just remove them from the game. And I didn't get any good setup bursts or anything like that game because, like I said, this is the first time I'm doing a battleground while I'm talking. So I didn't play at max, of course. I knew I messed up. I messed up a lot of last stands there. I was clicking last stand instead of spell reflection for some reason. It was very strange. But I think that's a good demonstration of numbers. Well, I'm going to talk about the RBGs just very slightly. When it comes to, it's good. You don't fit a Gladiator Stance Warrior into a team as if it's another Warrior spec. You fit it into the team as if it's a Death Knight. Because of the damage, because of the dot cleave, because of these things, and you have that survivability, but you don't have the MS effect, and you don't have the Shattering Throw. So you very much fit it as if it's a Frost Death Knight. So, good burst teams, it's good for. If you got melee burst teams, it's going to be good for. But it's going to excel in dot cleave comps, and that's where it's really going to shine. Because it is a dot cleave class. It does have that very strong dot cleave. In most RPGs, it's more like 20 to 30% of my damage, and I am usually very near the top, if not the top. So, oh no, it made me arms, and I'm not very good at arms. You guys are going to get to laugh at me. But, I'll play in arms one game. I have a healer. This is going to be embarrassing for you guys. Oh, no, he's DPS. It'll be a quick game. So it really fits well in rot comps. So that's really it for the pros and cons. I do want to talk about my next video. It's probably, what I'm wanting to do, like I said, I want to do duel, how to 1v1 certain classes. I think it'll put some insight into the spec and really show how it shines when you come up against one person. So I think it's a good situation. Oh my goodness! See, I'm playing as if I'm glad. I'm using my glad abilities. Sorry guys, I'm trying to concentrate on this arms thing. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna try to talk about the 1v1s and things like that. Do tell me, try to find out something else you'd like to watch. If you'd like to see some videos of me doing something else, I've got the 1v1s idea. I've got a couple more ideas I think I might materialize in the near future. So, stay tuned. We'll see what's going to happen. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching the video. I know this one was a little bit longer than the first. I didn't expect it to be. It was. If you would, like it if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. That's fine. Comment. I would love to hear insight, hear what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, what you want to see, what you don't want to see. If you want to subscribe, I'm going to try to put some videos up every Thursday. So, that's it for today. Guys, thank you so much. I'll catch y'all later.